Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I, just before I speak about the South Canterbury finance situation, add my thoughts to those in Christchurch, and I certainly agree with the comments of previous speakers on that issue. Mr Speaker, I want to address the issue of South Canterbury finance and a couple of the things that I think need to be looked at further. First of all, we need to think about why it was that there was a need for a Crown guarantee. We needed a Crown guarantee in respect of deposits to financial intermediaries like banks and finance companies, because without the wheels of finance turning, the economy quickly grinds to a halt, and the potential damage to the operation of the wider economy from the wheels of credit completely seizing up were perceived to be such a risk, not just in New Zealand but in many countries around the Western world, that there was a need government saw a need to intervene and to give some confidence to those who were investing in those institutions so that they would invest in it, so those institutions could themselves keep lending. And the government of the day, and I was part of that and happy to take responsibility for that, thought the same as governments did overseas, that it was a necessary step to take. We didn't want to do it. We saw that there would be distortions caused. We saw that moral hazard was being created. But nonetheless, we thought that it was a necessary step to take. And I think that I do agree with the Deputy Prime Minister, Bill English, when he says that overall it was necessary, and even with the benefit of hindsight, it had to be done. Now, you could say, well, why didn't we stop at banks? Well, why stop at banks? Why prefer the interests of banks over finance companies? No financial institution can sustain a run on the fund, whether they're a bank or a finance company. So I don't think there's a valid criticism made there. But I do think we should think about what it was that we were trying to do. We weren't trying to guarantee what was already lost. There were terms that related to those guarantees that said that we weren't going to prop up the things that were already broke. And I think one of the questions that needs to be answered here arises out of what the Deputy Prime Minister said today. He said that as 2009 evolved, it became clear that the lending of South Canterbury Finance prior to the date of the guarantee was not of high quality. Was not of high quality. They'd doubled the size of their book, he'd said, to about $2 billion by the time of the guarantee, and he's essentially saying a lot of that lending was shonky. Well, there's some questions that need to be answered about that. Who knew that, and who knew that when? Who should have known that? We need to look at what the directors knew. What did the trustee company knew? There was a statutory trustee of a finance company. In this case, I think it was Trustees Executors and Agency Limited. What did they know? What should they have known had they been acting prudently? What did the auditors know? There are auditors of these organisations. What did they know? What responsibility did some of the valuers have? Were there cozy relationships with some of the valuers that were acting here? There are a lot of questions that need to be answered here. And I think one of the reasons why I'm a wee bit perturbed that some of these things haven't been answered already is there is a question for me as to whether the guarantee was enforceable in the first place. If this guarantee was actually obtained by misrepresentation on the part of the finance company, maybe Fran O'Sullivan's right that things should have been reopened and that there should have been a look as to whether those depositors who had effectively, if what Bill English has said, already lost their money at the time when the guarantee came in, whether they actually should have been forced to be sharing the pain, and whether they should have been putting this into statutory management, trying to find a fair outcome that saw them recapitalising in part the institution, and also had a look at whether some of these preferential transactions that have been entered into since the date of the Crown guarantee were appropriate. So, Mr Speaker, I think there are some very real questions to be answered there, and I would hope that in the fullness of time the government sees fit to agree that there should be a full and independent inquiry here. I think there is a need to have a look here to see what's gone wrong and to see what blame should be apportioned. I certainly think that the auditors, the trustees, the directors will all be ducking for cover. If I was in their situation, I'd probably be ducking for cover too. But someone needs to look at whether there should be responsibility allocated to them rather than all of the cost of meeting this guarantee to deposit holders effectively falling on the taxpayer. Maybe the taxpayer should be seeking some recompense from other parties that have some legal responsibility for some of the things that have gone wrong here. And we won't know that unless there is a proper inquiry as to what has gone down here. In terms of Mr Hubbard's role, well, you know, I'm not ready to absolve him from all responsibility, but I would say that he did put a lot of his own assets in to try and prop up the company in a way he probably wasn't legally obliged to do.
Amy Adams.